You're tuned in to the It's Real podcast with your hosts, Kayla Callender and Andrew Yagi. Each week, we'll talk about what happens behind the scenes working full-time in real estate and share with you real-life stories, our successes and failures as we work to help consumers and industry professionals reach their real estate and real-life goals. Here we go.
It's episode 53 of the It's Real podcast. I'm Kayla Callender, and I'm a mortgage lender.
And I'm Andrew Yagi, and I'm a real estate agent. Kayla, so great to see you.
Good to see you. I know we kind of try to take a little bit of a break here and there with busy summer, and rightfully so, because it's been so busy. I know you guys have been pretty crazy busy with your family. What's been going on with you guys?
Yeah, we've had a pretty great summer, although, man, August 15th already, more or less. And, school's going to be starting pretty soon. But yeah, we've been enjoying the lakes, just kind of going on, some mini trips around the area. We were in Wisconsin this last weekend, going to go check out Great Wolf Lodge in the cities next week, kind of an annual trip that we do. And things are great. Real estate's been, super busy, a little bit of a different market, but, we'll obviously share some stats today and talk about that, talk about rates, which seems to be what everybody wants to talk about. But what's been going on with you?
Around here we go hard in the summer. I mean, that's what we do in the Midwest. We don't get a lot of summer. So I looked and I told my husband, I said, we haven't been in town one weekend. We've been gone every weekend. But, when you have a lake home and you host and you want to be out there, and it's a little slice of heaven, and it's nice to get out of the city. So we've spent a lot of time out there. We've got every weekend through the end of summer here, we're hosting a lot of family and friends. So it's a blessing. But I think there's this time where it comes to be fall, and it's kind of like sweet. Like we can be home and like clean the house, like little things that get put on the back burner. So it's been crazy busy in the best way, such a blessing. And we've had pretty good weather, and that's what we've been up to. Now, the whole mortgage thing, we've got a lot to talk about there with real estate and rates and everything. So
yeah, we do. Well, Kayla, I think we should dive right in because we do have a lot to talk about today. So first of all, again, I can barely turn a corner and I don't even work in mortgage, but of course it's associated with real estate, but everybody wants to talk about rates. Mm-hmm. So talk about rates, Kayla.
I would love to talk about rates. What I want to say first and foremost is there are so many hundreds, thousands of options for interest rates, depending upon if you're buying, if you're selling and buying, like in terms of like if you want to refi, if you are buying certain properties, if you have certain credit scores. There's so much that goes into an interest rate. And the reason that I say that is that we always share these Mortgage News daily rates. These are national averages based on prime candidates, great credit scores. This is not anything to do with down payment assistance. This sometimes doesn't reflect refi rates, things like that. So the reason I say that is that this is a really great guide for people to hop on and just keep an idea of like what rates are doing. So as you've seen lately quite a bit was the comment has been rates are down about a percentage to where they were at over a year ago. But one thing that we want to keep in mind is that there are moments, hours, days, and time where rates will be really high. It might not be an average for a week or 2 weeks. It might just be a moment. Same with when rates are at their lowest. It's a moment in time. And so there is a lot of truth that, it's been about a percentage, but it doesn't mean that you're saving a percentage to where you were first approved or where you bought now can refinance. But the great part is that, yes, rates have trended down. That wonderful consumer pricing index, that CPI report has come out, and that's what's pushed our rates down. And so we've seen them kind of trickle up just a little bit, but there's a lot more hope with clients, a lot more discussions and conversations being had about refinances. And so I've been having a ton of conversations with clients about refinancing. And the common question is, should I refinance now? And that's where it is so important. If you're refinancing, I'll touch on this briefly, is that you have a conversation with the lender, because you might save a quarter or a half in rate, but what if you could save a whole percentage next month? There's a lot of data that's going to be coming out. It's an election year. And so we're having a lot of conversations with clients, buyers included, about if you buy now, if you refinance now, that is great. You can save some money now. But what does that look like in a month, in 6 months? So there's a lot to be said about rates. And I am hopeful, based on the data, that we're going to continually see rates decline. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, a lot of conversations being had, Andy. And one of the things that I'm sharing with my buyers, or I've shared on social media, is how does it impact my approval amount if I was once approved at 7% and now I'm at 6.5%? And so that's something that we're having conversations about, of what does this look like? What does this mean for you? And I know you've got that graph I can see.
Yeah, right,
Um,
right there, Kayla. I thought that was really handy that you put that together.
And it's just, thanks, Chat GPT. One of the things, though, is it's just really cool to see, like, if you go to, let's just say, I'm just going to use 8% at the high end. If you have a $550,000 loan, 4,036 principal and interest. Let's just go down to 7, a full percentage. Let's just go from 8 to 7. You're now at 3,659. And then if you go to compare that, like, what do I get at 4,036 compared to, what can I go up higher in price? If you go down and find that, you're now able to afford 50,000, 75,000. It allows you more buying power in addition. So clients are then having to decide, do I want more buying power, or do I just want to save money in my payment? So those are the conversations that are being had. And all I can say is have those conversations, because it is not a one size fits all. And rates are constantly moving and changing, and they're different for everybody. But this is, at the end of the day, really positive news for our industry.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's just great. I mean, just from an affordability standpoint. So obviously, we know
Yeah.
that consumer costs have gone up markedly, and so individuals are looking for some respite from that, and so it's finally coming. And just looking at these, and again, we know these are national averages, but just to
Mhm.
see a 5 is really, really awesome.
I know.
And then to kind of read further that, hey, people are taking notice, applications are up in general, they're soaring. The refi index is up 35%. That's really interesting too. But Kayla, I think you had, kind of a chart or a graph that you
Mhm.
wanted to share, that kind of talked about that. Do you still have that handy?
Yeah, let me just pull that up here. So one of the things that that I want to talk about was, and I want to pull up a little bit of a range, right? I'll do that right now here. So when we look to see, well, what have rates done? Like what's the lowest they've been? What's the highest they've been?
Mhm.
One thing to keep in mind is that it's not just on one day. So let me share this, Andy. Hang tight here. I want to share this
Yeah, that'd be great.
with our crew. But just because you heard that they were at 6.125 at one point doesn't mean that they're there today, and that doesn't mean that you qualify for that. Or I saw some individuals sharing interest rates, but it was with 25% down, and it was with a 740 credit score and a 1% origination fee. So if you have a loan amount for 500,000, you're paying $5,000 upfront for that rate. So I share that because I think it's just so important to note that it's not a one size fits all.
I've got a question for you, like, because of course, we talk about all of the different parameters that influence terms and rate and
Yeah.
everything. What are you seeing, credit score wise out there? Are you seeing that, there are greater challenges with individuals coming to you? And I'm just looking at this, of course, on the real estate agent side, we don't get as involved, with some of the discussions on finances. That's largely with the lender. But I look at, having some rental properties myself and, screening for new tenants. And I have never seen so many low credit scores, like in even the 4 to 500 range, as I've been seeing lately. Are you seeing, just as affordabilities become more of an issue, are you seeing more of that? Or
I am so much, Andy, and I'm really glad you brought that up. I wasn't going to talk about that today, but it is a big concern, because what I see is I see people posting rates and saying, here's a rate today. Client sees 6.125. But if they have a 580 credit score, and this is based off 740, it is so disheartening when all of a sudden you're being told, well, no, your rate's actually 8 1/8 or 7.5. And so there's almost this like confused thought process, or this anger of like, but I saw rates are this. And so I think it's important that if we are sharing anything with our consumers about rates, that we are educating them that this is not a one size fits all. Now more than ever, people are tight for cash. They're paycheck to paycheck. Andy, I pulled credit for another client yesterday, and this is probably the third time now that I've seen this amount. $86,000 car loan at this time was a 24% interest rate. And what's happening, our clients are trying to keep the things that they have, but they're now financing it. Credit card debt is through the roof. We are seeing cash out refinances where people are going from a 3.5% rate to a 6.5% rate. They're willing to trade the equity to pay off that higher debt, but it is very difficult to get people approved now more than ever. And so that's where I'm telling my realtor partners, I'm telling clients, like, this isn't something that we just want to get an application and push through. Like, this could take time because we're going to require education and counseling about your finances. So it has
Mhm.
been just a different beast.
Yeah. Well, and obviously the economy's been challenging, but then even looking, and you've probably read some of the, the news articles as well, just talking about, is renting the future of single family homes just because of affordability.
Mhm.
And actually this article talks as well about home builders starting to, actually build more homes that are, more geared towards renting. 7.3% of newly constructed homes went into the rental market. But just, and I think citing, some of the issues you're talking about, where it's getting to be really, really challenging for the consumer to get qualified. So what is the alternative? Well, the alternative's to rent.
Well, right. And I think that a lot of people just don't know what to do anymore. They're at a point where they're like, it doesn't make sense. I don't want to be tied to a mortgage. And so they're like, well, I'll just stick this out. And so part of me wonders that too, is if we're going to see a lot more people rent as rates come down, that provides a lot more hope, but it's tough to tell what's going to happen. But we see a lot of people signing those 12 month leases again. I mean,
Mhm.
a lot of people. So
Right. Did you find that chart, Kayla?
no, I can't find that chart, Andy. I can't
Sure.
share it. So I
Well,
will
that's
have
okay.
to.
We can talk about it another episode. Kayla, I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about, just general, market. And we'll talk more, from the angle of the Fargo area, which, my area is slightly different, but it's going to be similar. And, you had shared this, just kind of talking about, oh, there, you did find it.
I have it.
Okay, we'll
It wasn't,
sidestep back to that. So you
it
go ahead.
wasn't refreshing, but we got it if we want to come back.
No, you can go ahead, and then we'll dive into some stats after that.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was in this, it's you can see, you have current mortgage rates. This is just from Mortgage News Daily. You can see that there's a high point right at the beginning of probably end of 2023. But do you see there's a high point there? And then there's ups and downs and ups and downs. It's trending down.
Yep.
But as you can see towards the end of July, beginning of August, you see that it hit another low point, but then it snuck up a little bit. So when we're talking about, there's a 1% difference or there's such a change, remember it's points in time, and you could have caught, your house at a different point and you might be refinancing at another point. Now take into account what we just talked about: credit scores, down payment, loan to value, all of these things are taken into account. This is based off of a prime credit, excellent candidate. And I want to be honest about that so that people know that it's just not a one size fits all. It's just be aware. Be aware that it's going to be different for everybody.
Right. It's almost like the, consumer perception is, hey, these are the rates, and
Yeah.
anybody can walk in, and everybody's going to get the same rate.
Well, and I might be stepping on toes, or no, I'm not stepping on toes. This might be taboo to talk about, but that's why I get very concerned when people not in mortgage, like maybe they're in our industry, but they're not mortgage lenders, they share interest rates, because I feel like sometimes they don't understand. You,
Right.
Andy, you have such a great knowledge. You understand, but there's other people, realtors in our industry, that might post something. I saw someone post rates the other day, and it said like I said, 25% down with a 1% origination, or this is based off of 740 credit. And so clients get all hyped up and they're like, hey, there's a lender that has a 575 rate. And then we lenders are like, well, actually, that's not the case. Like, yes, it's true. If you fit that box, absolutely you can get that. So
Right.
it's a lot of kind of backpedaling for the client sometimes when they think it's just one rate.
But people don't know what they don't know, and agents don't know what they don't know. And Kayla, I wouldn't know a lot of this if we wouldn't be 53 episodes of, talking real estate and
I
mortgage.
think you
Because
know.
honestly, you've educated me a lot, and I really appreciate that.
Well, that's what it's about, is like it's about us educating. And if clients can take the time to be educated, those are the ones that are super successful. They're empowered, and they're the ones that feel good about signing on the dotted line to get a new home.
Sure, sure.
Mhm.
Very good. Well, let's talk some stats, Kayla. So, obviously things have been, there have been challenges and headwinds, in the real estate industry this year. And, a big part of that, due to the fact that rates have been so high and just, CPI and inflation and, all of the factors we've just been talking about, affordability is at an all-time low. In fact, before we talk about stats, I just want to pull up an Inman article because Keller
Mhm.
Williams Realty, they have their family reunion this week for their
Fun.
mega agent camp. And, Gary Keller was talking about the fact that, hey, we are in a recession as an industry right now. And
Mhm.
a lot of that due to rates and everything, and affordability is an issue. Gary asserts that, the real estate is one of the only groups in the US right now that's in a recession, although I think it's a little bit more widespread. If you look at the ag environment, you look at, John Deere's been, doing some huge layoffs. A lot of the John
Mhm.
Deere network, they're trying to liquidate a lot of their inventory because they're sitting on way too much equipment. Fast food, they've had some headwinds. The car dealerships, have had challenges as well. I was talking to a car dealer the other day, and back at the start of COVID, like the average individual had a car that was about 8 years old. And even for that time, that was the highest average age of a car on the road. Now it's up to 12 years. So like new car sales are not there, even though, again, you're seeing some clients that are, borrowing $80 some thousand to buy a car, but their service, business really is up. But, so just kind of looking at real estate, looking at some of this, that, yeah, the industry is a little bit challenged. And of course, talking about recession is people spending less money. So people who are unemployed spend less money. And of course, they're not out there buying. So, I want to contrast that a little bit, looking at some of the stats here that we have on the housing market, because if we look kind of across the Fargo-Moorhead area, home
Mhm.
sales are up. They're not up a huge amount, but they're up a
Mhm.
little bit.
Yep.
Active listings are up. More people are selling. There are more new listings. Homes are sitting on the market a little bit longer. 50 days up from 42. Home
Mhm.
sales, the average home price continues to increase
Yep.
when there are more pending home sales. And so that is encouraging to see. Also, on the other end of the spectrum, I see a lot of the home builders still in the Fargo area sending out weekly emails and like, hey, we've got a lot of inventory we need to move.
Mhm.
What's your perspective on kind of the overall inventory and kind of the market and what's going on for sales?
I think people are still waiting for the election. I think there's a lot of consumer data, there's a lot of surveys, there's a lot of information that says, I just want to wait. And I hear that from clients too. Or there's a lot of sense of defeat. And they're like, well, again, if I can wait it out, I'm going to get a lower rate and then I can afford more. The problem is, in that graph you showed, $10,000 was the difference in price from last year to this year. And then I think about what your home could have appreciated in that time, but let alone you're now spending 10,000 more. So a lot of times, again, it comes down to the education. What's the cost of waiting? I know it's rates are higher, but right now there's not a lot of competition. You're not having to fight tooth and nail to see a home and make an offer. And what I'm seeing is that clients are able to get homes with seller concessions still around here. My thought, Andy, and this is mine alone, is that a lot of people are either defeated or they just want to wait to see what happens. I'm just going to wait and see. But I hope that if people are serious, And if they do wait, they're prepared for what could happen. Rates decline. Clients, now we saw on that graph, more consumers are coming into the market to purchase. But on top of it, we have individuals refinancing. That means lenders are busy, appraisers are busy, title companies. And we have this storm of what we saw in 2020. And it was like signing in your vehicle, number one, because of COVID, but there's so much that goes into that. But all I can really chalk it up to around here from what I've seen and I've talked to with other clients is I want to wait and see what happens.
Sure. And there are a lot of people that say that. And some people say, well, you're just saying that, or it's cliche, it's an election year, but there are actually stats out there that show it. In fact, Kayla, if you look over the past 11 presidential elections, home sales generally increase. So after how many of the last 11 presidential elections did we see home sales increase?
That's a really great question. Are you quizzing me?
I'm quizzing you. This is a trivia question. This is for pretend like I'm Regis Philbin and we're on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And you're out of all of your phone a friend, and this is your $1 million question.
I phoned my mom. She knows everything. Seriously. Oh, Barbara. 11. I'm going to say 11.
11 of the last 11?
Yes.
So it's actually 9 of the last 11 presidential elections. Home
Barbara
sales
would have had that
went
right.
up, and so that goes back to 1978. And so each year with the presidential elections in blue here, and the year immediately after each election is green if it rose. So there were just a couple of years where home sales actually decreased. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I would predict home sales will increase after this election, regardless of who gets in, just by virtue of rates should hopefully continue to decrease, which means there's probably going to be more appetite, especially once some of the distractions subside.
Well, and I think too, right now we're seeing people wanting to get into their homes before school, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're seeing this is the time of year when it's like a rush at title companies. I think then traditionally, Andy, we see things kind of get quieter around like the holiday season. I'm preparing for it to potentially get crazier because I think there's a lot of pent up energy as well.
Sure. I think you're right. I think so. Well, it'll be interesting to see, and of course, we'll have all of the stats and everything going on to keep everybody up to date. But Kayla, I want to shift our focus a little bit for the last portion of our episode, just to talk about some big changes that are coming to the real estate industry, and they're coming this Saturday. Is Saturday the 17th?
There is.
Yeah. So for those who haven't been following along, there have been some lawsuits against real estate brokerages and against the National Association of Realtors. And as a result of that and kind of the settlement, the home buying and selling process is going to be forever changed. And Kayla, I'd like to say that it's going to be changed for the better, even though I think that we're going to be in for, about 12 to 18 months of confusion. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about it, kind of from the real estate agent perspective. So, in March of this year, the National Association of Realtors, they basically settled a lawsuit with, homeowners, who filed suit about transparency, largely surrounding real estate agent commissions. And since then, there have been a bunch of new rules that have been put into place, especially surrounding commissions and even simple things like even going to look at a house. So Kayla, number one, starting this weekend, realtors can no longer show a consumer a property without a signed written agreement. That explains kind of the agent relationship and explains things like compensation. It used to be kind of the Wild West where, hey, I just want to go look at a house. I'm going to find an agent through Zillow. And, people were bouncing from agent to agent. There was confusion. And that's going to change as part of the settlement. So we need to have a written agreement in place. For those who don't sign a written agreement, if an agent gets caught, there are potentially thousands of dollars of fines that are available, and even, the potential eventually for someone to lose their license. Now, a lot of consumers are probably saying, hey, I don't want to commit to somebody. I just want to go look at a house. Mm-hmm. And I can totally appreciate that. And so there are going to be a couple of different options, Kayla. Number one, it could be something as simple as having kind of a touring agreement, which is maybe, the lightest form of an agreement in place, but very, very simple. Our particular brokerage, eXp Realty, has a very simple kind of single property buyer broker representation agreement.
Mhm.
So like, hey, Kayla, if I'm just going to go and show you and Taryn one property, we're just going to put this simple single page agreement in place to go look at a single property and just kind of defining our relationship and defining how I, as an agent, am compensated. Or we can do something just slightly more extensive, that kind of talks a little bit more in general about looking at multiple properties, how long our agreement is, what kind of properties you're looking for, and kind of our compensation and what that looks like. It also talks, Kayla, about a very important piece because, in a sense, there's some what we'll call decoupling of commissions, which means, in the past, 99% of the time, a seller's agent or a seller would compensate the buyer's agent, and that's not necessarily going to be the case and be
Mhm.
automatic. So these new forms too, Kayla, are going to talk a little bit about, hey, what happens about collecting? How do we address collecting free from a seller, and what happens if the seller isn't offering anything? And
Mhm.
so I'm going to say 95 to 99% of the time, nothing is going to be all that much different, other than we have to have an agreement in place before we even start looking.
Mhm.
I'll tell you what I think about it, Kayla, but you tell me, what are your thoughts kind of as a mortgage lender, and what are some implications there?
I think that there's a lot of just a lot of chaos around it because again, it comes down to educating the consumer. And truthfully, I think that this is going to be really great. There's going to be a lot more clarity when it comes to representation. And there's a lot of realtors and brokerages that already have this in place already, but there's a lot that aren't. Around here, they do. So, no big deal. But I think that when we are showing, and when I say we, the industry is showing clients homes, and you're taking time out of your day, the seller's day. We don't know sometimes if they're approved or not. A lot of times they are, but I think we want to ensure that people are serious. And so it's the biggest purchase you'll ever make. So I'm grateful that it's in place. I think it's great that you have this, one single property agreement. I think that's great too. Um, so I'm excited for that. I think that'll be great. In terms of, you know, the conversation around, who's going to pay for the buyer's agent, things like that. I think that's hopefully just going to continue to remain pretty similar. I just think that it's just going to be a little bit more clear about how people are getting paid. And I think to be clear is to be kind. So,
I like that. To be clear is to be kind. And yeah, I think you're right. There, like I said, there's going to be some confusion for the next 12 to 18 months. I mean, people have generally, seen some of this in the news, although not that many people know about it. So we're just going to really have to step up our game, as agents, as we are, kind
yep.
of explaining options. And, the tough part is, we've talked in the past statistically, half of the agents out there in the nation that are licensed sell 0 to 1 homes a year, which really leads to a lot of incompetence, added costs, deals that get wrecked or get screwed up. And so now, Kayla, more than ever, it's going to matter who you work with.
It
And
is.
we always work really hard to get individuals, to come into our office for a consultation. And those individuals that do come in, we have a lot more success. We spend less time looking for homes. We don't waste time looking for homes that, don't check the boxes. And generally they get to know us. We build a relationship and we have a better experience. So more of that is going to be happening. And again, we're working with select individuals in the first place in our office. So I think things are only going to get better. And, hopefully there are going to be some individuals who really aren't dedicated, to real estate and who aren't working in their clients' best
Yeah.
interests, that are going to disappear, which means people are going to be better represented and going to have a better experience.
And I love that because I work with realtors day in and day out. And I know what it's like to be on the lending side. And I know what it's like to see a smooth transaction. And when you get into contract, when you find a home and you write an offer, the work is just getting started. And
Correct.
when you have things happen. I mean, things pop up in our industry that are, just they're surprises or things you don't expect. And it's so important to have representation that's going to take care of you and educate you and give you the best options because it's not very often that things just go completely smooth, no hiccups. I mean, you have home inspections, you have appraisals done, you have certain things with sellers to buyers. I mean, I was working with a realtor on a deal We just closed a few weeks ago, and the seller left so much stuff. Just they said they could leave some, and you know what happens. You give an inch to take a mile. And that realtor was on the phone getting a dumpster at the house. Like things pop up, and I'm like, wow, what a blessing. And because she knew that the company, they were able to get there that day for the client. And I think about the level of service that these realtors that are really great are giving. They deserve to be able to take care of our industry. And yes, not that there's others that intentionally don't want to do a good job. Like that's not what we're saying, but the very great, incredible realtors are going to find that they are going to align with the clients. And it's going to be very great for everybody, I feel, Andy. That's just my opinion.
Just like the really great, awesome lenders that are out there that are going the extra mile, taking the time to provide education, providing fancy little charts and other tools. I think you're right. So the strong will survive, Kayla.
And I think that it's going to, high tides raise all ships. I think as you start to work with lenders that educate, as you start to work with these realtors that take the time to also educate, it's going to make the home buying process, the experience just so much better. So it's a win for everybody, I feel.
Yep. Well, obviously, we've just touched on this a little bit, but I think that we'll take a little bit more of a deep dive on what does this mean for buyers and what does it mean for sellers, on future episodes. But
Yeah.
I just know that changes are here, and again, reach out to your trusted professional, have a conversation, and figure out what the implications are for you, and find someone that's going to do a really great job for you if you're buying or selling.
And Google has a wonderful way of telling you how your professionals do. So I always say Google people.
Well, Kayla, I think that puts a wrap on episode 53. It's great, great connecting with you and looking forward to some continued conversation. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the week.
I will if you will.
See you, Kayla.
Bye, Andy.